Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, and welcome to our chanting class at the Sri Vidya Temple. Today we'll be learning Medha Suktam, which is a Vedic Suktam. It's found in Krishna Yajur Veda, which is the most common text that we chant from in the temple in our tradition. Specifically, it's from the Taittiriya Aranyakam is the text. And Medha means intelligence. But it's not just any kind of intelligence, like one person has translated as loving intelligence. So this is a name for Saraswati Devi. It's associated with her. So this Medha Suktam is often chanted for Saraswati Devi. And sometimes on special occasions, like if there's a large event, like normally in the temple, we'll do what we call Pancha Sukta Parayanam, where we choose 5 very important suktas and chant those during Abhishekam. But on special occasions, they may do what's called Sapta Sukta Parayanam, where they do 7 suktas. And at that time, this Medha Suktam may be included. So one of the benefits of this suktam is basically the blessings of Saraswati Devi, like blessings for learning, for spiritual wisdom, for good memory, for a lot of inner light, because at the end there's specifically prayers for to be sort of glowing and shining with light like the sun, like the energy and the divine radiance of the sun. So that's essentially the significance of this suktam for wisdom, spiritual light and illumination, divine understanding, and all of those very sort of good and auspicious qualities that we need for whether it's for our worldly life or also for spiritual life. And one of the prayers specifically in here is asking to remove all of the negative speech from our lives. So there's a word duruktan, the very negative or harsh speech that hurts people, or it might be like a lie or something that's negative or not auspicious. And so the prayer is to remove that from our lives completely, because we can't really do anything great unless we have positive, auspicious speech.
And what are the 5 suktams, the Pancha suktams that you said? One is Purusha Suktam.
So there are different traditions on that, depending on whether you're a Vaishnava or a Shakta or a Shaiva. So basically they'll choose, each tradition will choose the 5 suktas that they consider most important to them. So in our temple, I believe Aya has selected 5 that he feels are very special and energizing. So what we chant in the temple is Rudram, Purusha Suktam, Narayana Suktam, Sri Suktam, Nila Suktam, and Durga Suktam. So that's actually more than 5. But that's typically what we chant in the temple. But in other traditions, they might not include Narayana Suktam. Like if it's a Shiva temple, they probably won't chant Narayana Suktam. They might include something else. Okay, so we'll start with the Ganapati prayer and then we'll start the class. So for those of you who haven't attended one of the chanting classes, you can keep yourselves muted. And then once we get into repeating the lines, people can take turns unmuting themselves and repeating back the lines. But for now, you can keep yourselves muted. Om Shuklam Baradharam Vishnum Shashivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Viknopashantaye. Swiji, do you want to do the first couple of lines and then we'll switch off to someone else?
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, my throat just got a little bit irritated. Om Medha Devi
Om Medha Devi. Om Medha Devi.
Joshamarna
Joshamana. Joshamana.
Medha Devi Joshamarna
Medha Devi Joshamana. Medha Devi Joshamana.
Naaga Advishwachi
Na aga advishvachi. Na aga advishvachi.
Bhatra Sumanasya Mana
Bhadrasu manasyamana. Bhadrasu manasyamana.
Naaga Advishwachi Bhatra Sumanasya Mana
Na aga advishvachi bhadrasu manasyamana. Na aga advishvachi bhadrasu manasyamana.
Medha Devi Joshamarna Naaga Advishwachi
Medha Devi Jushamana na aga advishvachi. Medha Devi Jushamana na aga advishvachi.
Medha Devi Joshamarna Naaga Advishwachi Bhatra Sumanasya Mana
Medha Devi Jushamana na aga Vishvachi Bhadra Sumanasya. Medha Devi Jushamana na aga Vishvachi Bhadra Sumanasya.
Vayajushta
Vayajushta. Vayajushta.
Nudamana
Nudamana. Nudamana.
Vayajushta Nudamana
Vayajushta Nudamana. Vayajushta Nudamana.
Duruktaan
Duruktaan. Duruktaan.
Vayajushta Nudamana Duruktaan
Vayajushta Nudamana Duruktaan. Vayajushta Nudamana Duruktaan.
Bruhadvadema
Brihadvadema. Brihadvadema.
Vidathe Suvira Aha
Vidathe suvira aha. Vidathe suvira aha.
Bruhatvadema Vedathe Suvira Aha.
Brihadvadema vidathe suvira aha. Brihadvadema vidathe suvira aha.
Tvaya Jushta Nudamana Doruktaan Bruhatvadema Vedathe Suvira Aha.
Vayajushtanudamana duruktaan brihadvadema vidathe suvira aha. Vayajushtanudamana duruktaan brihadvadema vidathe suvira aha.
So now I'll chant both the lines, and then after that, Sriji, you can repeat both the lines. Om Medha Devi Joshamarna na Agaat Vishwachi Bhatra Sumanasya Mana Tvaya Jushta Nudamana Duruktaan Bruhat Vadema Vidathe Suvira Aha.
Om Medha Devi Joshamana na Aga Dvishvati Bhadra Sumanasya Mana Tvaya Jushta Nudamana Duruktaan Brihadvadema Vidathe Suvira Aha. Om Medha Devi Joshamana na Aga Dvishvati Bhadra Sumanasya Mana Tvaya Jushta Nudamana Duruktaan Brihadvadema Vidathe Suvira Aha.
Okay. Now we're chanting it a little bit slowly, which means we typically have to take a breath somewhere in the middle of these lines because they're a little bit longer. But as we practice more and are chanting a little bit faster, it's actually ideal to chant these lines all together in one breath without taking a pause. So if you have to take a pause, definitely do that and breathe. Breathing's important. But once you practice more, if it's okay, then you can try to get the whole line in one breath so that there's no pause whenever it's possible. So for the next couple lines, is there anyone else who would like to repeat the lines? Adit, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Tvaya Jushta
Tvaya Jushta
Rushir
Bhavati
Tvaya Jushta Rushir Bhavati
Tvaya Jushta Bhavati
Devitvaya
Devitvaya
Tvaya Jushta Rushir Bhavati Tvaya.
Tvaya jushtarishirбhavati devi Tvaya Tvaya jushtarishirбhavati devi Tvaya
Good. Brahma gatash.
Brahma gatash Brahma gatash
Brahma gatash Shri Rutat.
Brahma gatash Shri Rutat Brahma gatash Shri Rutat
Brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya.
Brahma gatat Shri Rutat Tvaya Brahma gatat Shri Rutat Tvaya
Good. Now we'll try the whole line. You can just take it slowly. I'll do it first. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya.
Tvaya Jushta Rishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya Tvaya Jushta Rishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya
That's good. So it started out good with the swaras, and then sort of in the middle of the line, it went just a little bit off track. So maybe what I'll do is I'll chant that line maybe 3 or 4 times in a row, and everybody can listen to the swaras. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gatash Shri Rutat Tvaya. Okay, so now you can repeat after me. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya.
Tvaya Jushtarishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya Tvaya Jushtarishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya
Brahma gata Shri Rutat Tvaya.
Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya
Good. Tvaya jushtarushir-bhavati devi Tvaya brahma gata Shri Rutat Tvaya.
Tvaya Jushtarishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya Tvaya Jushtarishir Bhavati Devi Tvaya Brahma Gata Shri Ruta Tvaya
Good. Swaras are very good. All right, next line. Tvaya jushtash
Tvaya joshtash, Tvaya joshtash,
chitram vindate
Chitram vindate, Chitram vindate,
Tvaya jushtash chitram vindate
Tvaya joshtash chitram vindate, Tvaya joshtash chitram vindate,
Vasusano
Vasusano, Vasusano,
Tvaya jushtash chitram vindate Vasusano
Tvaya joshtash chitram vindate Vasusano, Tvaya joshtash chitram vindate Vasusano,
Jushaswatra virno
Joshasvadravino, Joshasvadravino,
Namedhe
Namedhe, Namedhe,
Joshaswatra virno Namedhe
Joshasvadravino me. Is there a holding between Joshasva and Dravino?
Yes.
Okay. Joshasvadravino namedhe, Joshasvadravino namedhe,
Tvaya jushtaschitram vindate vasusano jushaswatra virno namedhe
Tvaya joshtaschitram vindate vasusano Joshasvadravino namedhe. Tvaya joshtaschitram vindate vasusano jushasvatravino namedhe.
That was very good. Only one place where the swaras were was off. In the word Jushaswa, I think you use the lower swara on Ju. That's actually the middle swara. Jushaswat, Jushaswat. Okay,
Joshasva, Joshasva.
that's it. So do you want to try the line one more time?
Sure. Tvaya joshtaschitram vindate vasusano jushasvatravino namedhe. Tvaya jushtaschitram vindate vasusano jushasvatravino namedhe.
Okay.
I think I did that again the second time, right? It was
I think you did
Jushas,
it one time correctly and then the second time. So
Yeah.
notice those times when the mind wants to go to a different melody or a different swara and isolate it and practice it 10 times, 20 times. That's really helpful for sort of burning it into the brain. And for those of you who haven't seen previous classes on Vedic suttas, you may have noticed an unusual sound when we chanted Chitram Vindate. That M, if you're looking at the, well, depending on what script you're looking at, that sort of M sound is not a regular M. It's called Anuswara in Sanskrit. And it's pronounced differently according to what sound follows it. So I don't want to spend too much time on that now to explain it all. But if you go back to, for example, like our Purusha Suktam class or Rudram class, there would probably be more explanations of all the Anuswara pronunciations there. All right, so is there anyone else who would like to unmute themselves and repeat the lines?
I'll go.
Okay,
I'll
thank
do
you.
it. Teacher.
Thank you, Amma. Okay. All right, so we'll do the next line, and now they're a little bit shorter, so that's a little bit easier. Medham Indro
Medha Mahindro, Medha Mahindro,
Dadatu Medham
Dadatu Medham, Dadatu Medham,
Medham Indro Dadatu Medham
Medha Mahindro, Dadatu Medham, Medha Mahindro, Dadatu Medham.
So in the second part of that section, the Dhatu Medham, the swaras are a little bit different. So I'll repeat that again. Dadatu Medham.
Dadatu Medham, Dadatu Medham.
Good. And I'll just repeat it again another 4 times so that you hear everyone hears the melody clearly. Dadatu Medham. Dadatu Medham. Dadatu Medham. Dadatu Medham. And now I'll go back to the beginning of the line. Medham Indro Dadatu Medham.
Medham Mahindro, Dadatu Medham. Medham Mahindro, Dadatu Medham.
So again, the mind is wanting to sing a slightly different melody, so you can practice that line a little bit more after the class. But I'll go on for the rest of the line. Devi Saraswati.
Devi Saraswati, Devi Saraswati,
Devi Saraswati.
Devi Saraswati, Devi Saraswati.
So in this one, just be a little careful. In Saraswati, the sa is the middle note. Ra is the upper note. Saras.
Saras, Saras.
That's it. Saraswati.
Saraswati, Saraswati,
Devi Saraswati.
Devi Saraswati, Devi Saraswati,
Medhan Devi Saraswati.
Medham Devi Saraswati, Medham Devi Saraswati.
I'll try the whole line now.
Medham Mahindro Dadatu Medham Devi Saraswati.
That's very good.
Okay. मेधामयिन्द्रो ददातु मेधां देवी सरस्वती.
So still, a few of the swaras are coming out different. So one thing that's really good to do is find the recording of Chalakere brothers. I believe they've done this one. And play that on repeat. It's very short, so you can repeat it. Listening to it very, very frequently will also help to get the swaras and the melody into your mind very clearly. It's often very hard to pick up the swaras accurately when you're first learning, especially because we're over Zoom. And it's just a little bit harder to hear the notes clearly. But if you listen to the recording, it should be easier to hear in that way. Okay, so we'll go on to the next line. Medham me,
मेधां मे मेधां मे
Ashwina vobha,
अश्विना उभा अश्विना उभा
Medham me, Ashwina vobha,
मेधां मे अश्विना उभा मेधां मे अश्विना उभा.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with Vedic chanting, you might have noticed there's a little bit of a gap after May, in between May and Ashwina, and there's a reason for that. It has to do with the fact that May has a long vowel in it, and the next word starts with a vowel. So whenever that happens, there's a small gap or pause in the middle of the line. Vadhatam,
वाधत्तां वाधत्तां
Pushkarasraja,
पुष्करस्रज पुष्करस्रज
Vadhatam Pushkarasraja,
वाधत्तां पुष्करस्रज वाधत्तां पुष्करस्रज.
So in the last section, the upper swara is on the ka. Pushka rasraja.
Pushka rasraja Pushka rasraja.
And then all the rest, rasraja, are all the one note, the middle note. So I'll chant it one more time. Pushka rasraja.
Pushka rasraja Pushka rasraja.
That's it. Vadhatam pushkarasraja.
Vadhattam pushkarasraja Vadhattam pushkarasraja.
Good. Medham me ashwina vobha.
Medham me ashvina ubha Medham me ashvina ubha.
Good. Medham me ashwina vobha vadhatam pushkarasraja.
Medham me ashvina ubha vadhattam pushkarasraja. Medham me अश्विनावुभावादत्तां पुष्करस्रजा.
Very good. So there was a question about the YouTube video I was mentioning. Is it Chalakere Brothers? And yes, definitely Chalakere. I'm sure there are plenty of quality recordings, but the ones that are the gold standard are anything by Chalakere Brothers. They're really, really excellent, and we feel they're the gold standard, and their chanting is just extremely pleasant to listen to as well. So anything by them will always be the perfect thing to listen to for practice, and also just to keep it going in the background just so that it sort of starts to sink in. All right, so now I'll chant the 2 lines together, and then Amma, you can chant them after that. All right.
Okay.
Medham Indro dadatu medhan Devi Saraswati medham me ashwina vubhava dhattam pushkarasraja.
मेधां मयिन्द्रो ददातु मेधां देवी सरस्वती मेधां मे अश्विनावुभावादत्तां पुष्करस्रजा मेधां मयिन्द्रो ददातु मेधां देवी सरस्वती मेधां मे अश्विनावुभावादत्तां पुष्करस्रजा.
Good. And Sriji just mentioned in the chat, if you haven't seen that yet, that on YouTube, you can actually slow down the videos so that it's even easier to learn by listening to the repetition. So you can change the speed so that it's not quite so fast, as they do tend to chant a little bit fast. Okay, so for the next lines would anyone else like to unmute themselves?
I can do it.
I can do it, Amma. I can do it.
Okay, we'll start with the first person who said they would do it. I think that was Rajanaya.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Apsarasu.
Apsarasu.
You can just chant 2 times for each one.
Apsarasu. Apsarasu.
Okay, sorry. Chaya Medha.
Chaya Medha. Chaya Medha.
Apsarasu Chaya Medha.
Apsarasu Chaya Medha. Apsarasu Chaya Medha.
Good. Gandharveshu.
Gandharveshu. Gandharveshu.
So it might be a little bit hard to hear my voice when I do that, but the first syllable, gan, is the upper swara. Gandharveshu.
Gandharveshu. Gandharveshu.
Jayanmanaha.
Jayanmanaha. Jayanmanaha.
Gandharveshu Jayanmanaha.
Gandharveshu Jayanmanaha. Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha
Chayanmanaha
Chayanmanaha Chayanmanaha
Apsarasu Chaya Medha
Apsarasu Chayanmedaha Apsarasu Chayanmedaha.
So one thing to watch out, try to avoid adding any sounds or letters that aren't in the text. So instead of yan, it's ya, and then there's no visarga at the end of medha. So it's just ya medha, ya medha. Okay, so I'll repeat that one more time. Apsarasu Chaya Medha
Apsarasu Chayameda Apsarasu Chayameda.
Good. Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha
Gandharvesu Chayanmanaha Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha
Yanmanaha.
Yanmanaha Yanmanaha.
That's it. Now I'll try the whole line. Apsarasu Chaya Medha Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha
Apsarasu Chayameda Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha Apsarasu Chayameda Gandharveshu Chayanmanaha.
That's good. Just watch out for the swaras. Follow the text and make sure that you're chanting the swaras that are noted in the text. Sometimes our minds can create different kinds of melodies, but always stick to the ones that are noted there. And again, listening to Chalakere brothers repeatedly will definitely help with that.
Ekta, one more thing I found that helps is because the swara marks are pretty small, right? So using like two color highlighters, one for all the notes that go up, another which for the ones that go down, and then you're left with kind of the neutral notes and the double up kind of notes. That also helps, especially when you're learning, because otherwise, when you're trying to read it in real time, it's hard to see those marks.
That's very true. I forget what it's like when you're first starting out and you're trying to interpret all the little marks and dashes and dots everywhere. It's very challenging. And actually, when I first started, there weren't really any documents in English transliteration. So I would transliterate from the Devanagari by hand and use different color pens actually to make my own swara marks that were really bold and obvious and different colors. But you can
That's why you got it very good now for doing it. GRD Iyer also told, right? The color marking, different colors to make
colors
it.
and
That's
also
what.
writing it by hand. For some reason, when you write
Yes.
something by hand, that makes you remember it better. And that's something I always felt when I'm forced to write it in very accurate transliteration. That really helps to drill it into my brain as well. And that's like a likita japa, almost like a written japa. So people might be interested in trying that. Okay, so we'll go on to the next line. Daivim.
Daivihim Daivihim
Medha Saraswati
Medha Saraswati Medha Saraswati,
Medha,
Medha, Medha,
Medha Saraswati,
Medha Saraswati, Medha Saraswati,
Devi Medha Saraswati,
Devi Medha Saraswati, Devi Medha Saraswati.
good. Only thing to watch out here is in the first word, make sure that instead of pronouncing it like Devim, we pronounce it like Daivim. And I probably didn't enunciate that either. That's an AI, that's an I sound, Daivim. So we're used to seeing Devi, but here it's actually Daivim. Daivim Medha Saraswati.
Devi Medha Saraswati, Devi Medha Saraswati,
Samam
Samaham, Samaham,
Medha
Medha, Medha,
Samam Medha
Samaham, Medha, Samaham, Medha,
Devi Medha Saraswati Samam Medha
Devi Medha Saraswati Samaham Medha, Devi Medha Saraswati Samaham Medha.
Very good. One thing I thought I heard, I'm not sure, it almost sounded like you were saying Daivi Him. So that swara, it's a double swara, but it's just a regular E sound. So it's like E, E. So there's no extra H in there. Daivi Im. Okay, so just to point that out, it's a small thing. All right, so the next part of the line is a little bit tricky. Surabhir,
Surabir, Surabir,
Joshatagus,
Jushatagus, Jushatagus,
good. Swaha,
Swaha, Swaha,
and again here, we don't want to say swaha ha, it's swaha a. Swaha a.
Swaha, Swaha,
Good. Joshatagus swaha a.
Jushatagus, Swaha, Jushatagus, Swaha,
Surabhir Joshatagus swaha a.
Surabir, Jushatagus, Swaha, Surabir, Jushatagus, Swaha.
That's almost it. Just the first part, remember, it goes like Surabhir.
Surabir, Surabir.
Good. Now if we put it all together.
Surabir.
Surabhirjushata Swaha.
Surabir Jushata Kaswaha. Surabir Jushada Gaswaha.
Good. Sama Medha Surabhirjushata Swaha.
Sama Medha Surabir Jusata Gaswaha. Sama Medha Surabir Jushata Gaswaha.
So don't forget in the mam, there's actually the double swara there. Sama
Samaham Medha Surabir Jushaduk Jushatak Jushatak.
That's all right. It's a tricky one. Jushata Swaha.
Jushadha Kuswaha. Samaham Medha Surabir Jushadak Swaha.
Good. So this line is going to need a lot of practice for sure because it's one of the longer ones and it's definitely got some tricky parts. Okay, so just it takes a lot of practice, especially if you're new to Vedic chanting. It's a very specific kind of chanting. There's a lot of sort of specialized rules. So one thing that we can recommend is if anybody is new to Vedic chanting, Sriji did a course, Sounds of Sanskrit, or the Aksharamala, and that one is recorded. So we can post the link to that. And definitely that will give a really good introduction to all of the sounds and also some of the rules of chanting. So some of these things will be explained and it will be a little bit easier to pick up at that point. And I see Sriji answered the question about Anuswara. All right. Okay, so for the next two lines, is anyone would like to repeat those lines? Kalshi, you're smiling. Anyone?
Shirisha had volunteered earlier.
Who had?
Shirisha, I thought.
Shirisha Amma?
Yes, I can do. My sister is also with me, so both of us will be chanting.
Okay, very nice. All right, so we'll go on to the next line. Ama Medha.
Ama Medha. Ama Medha.
Surabhir.
Surabhir. Surabhir.
Ama Medha Surabhir.
Ama Medha Surabhir. Ama Medha Surabhir.
Vishwarupa.
Vishwarupa. Vishwarupa.
Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
Good. Hiranyavarna.
Hiranyavarna, Hiranyavarna,
Hiranyavarna,
Hiranyavarna, Hiranyavarna.
So in this section in Hiranya, there's only the upper swara on Ra, and other sounds are middle swara. So it's like
Okay.
Hiranya,
Hiranya, Hiranya,
that's it. Hiranyavarna,
Hiranyavarna, Hiranyavarna,
Jagati,
Jagati, Jagati,
Jagamya,
Jagamya, Jagamya,
Jagati, Jagamya,
Jagati, Jagamya, Jagati, Jagamya,
Hiranyavarna, Jagati, Jagamya,
Hiranyavarna, Jagati, Jagamya, Hiranyavarna, Jagati, Jagamya.
Okay, just watch out a little bit on the swaras. I'm going to chant that section 4 times so everyone can listen to the melody. Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya, Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya, Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya, Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya. Now you both can try it.
Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya, Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya.
Good, very close. Okay, go back to the beginning of the line. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
That's good. Just keep in mind in Amam, the swaras go Ama Am.
Ama
That's it. So now I'll try it again. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa.
So the first time was correct, and then the second time I think you went back to the other way. So that's just something to practice. So we're actually 5 minutes past our hour. So I'll chant this whole line and you can try the whole line. If I can get my, okay. And then we'll end the class. Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa. Hiranyavarna Jagati Amya.
Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya Ama Medha Surabhir Vishwarupa Hiranyavarna Jagati Jagamya.
That's very nice. Swaras still need some practice. So we'll pause the class there. We can continue next time with the rest of it and with practicing the swaras specifically. But in the few days we have before Wednesday, I would recommend that everybody search on YouTube for Chalakere Brothers Medha Suktam and try to listen to it as many times as you have time to listen. And then you can practice and chant along with it and try to hear when you're matching up correctly with them and when you're maybe off, because the more you listen and the more you listen to yourself, the more you develop your own ear, so that eventually you're actually able to hear when you're chanting the correct swara and when you're not chanting the swara. So that part is also important, to develop your own ear. All right, so we'll stop there. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank
I
you.
can hear.
The next one will be on Wednesday evening.
How do I stop recording?